Hi, welcome to our Lab 2.9 Island Chain Formation Data Analysis video. We're going to take a look at how to answer the questions where you need to graph the data. And so you need two documents pulled up. You need the lab itself, which has all the questions. This is your lab report, and this is the one that you're going to turn in. And then you also need the data table. So it's the same data that was given to you here. I just entered it into an Excel file for you so that it would be easier to graph. So let's take a look. Question 5 says graph the distance of each volcano from Kilauea versus the age of the volcano. And so in order to do that, we need to highlight the appropriate data. So the first one says the distance from Kilauea, and that's what it asks for over here, the distance from Kilauea versus the age of the volcano. So distance versus the age, and this is the radioactive age given in the units millions of years ago. And so to do that, I'm going to click here on this box, and I'm going to drag all the way down, highlighting the data that I'm looking to capture, and I'm going to hold down the control button. While I keep my finger holding the control button down, I'm going to also click and drag over the millions of years ago, the radioactive age column. So once I release my mouse and I release the control button, both of those columns will stay highlighted. I go up here to insert in the tools ribbon, and I go down to charts, and I'm going to insert a scatter chart. I'm going to insert just a plain scatter chart with no lines included yet. We're going to add a line in of our own. And so I've got that graph. I'm going to change the title, and I'm going to make it more meaningful for the data that we're looking at. So we're looking at distance of islands from, distance of volcanoes versus their radioactive age. Okay, and then I'm going to also add a couple other things in here to make our graph complete. And so I click over on this plus button, and I'm going to add axis titles, and I'm also going to add a trend line. And so that trend line automatically has Excel create a line where there's an equal number of points above and below the line that goes through sort of an average for all of those points. And we do see a trend. We see a linear trend. So this line moves in a straight direction. It doesn't kind of jump all over the place. It's what we would call a linear data trend. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so that we can label our axes. And then this is information in terms of the age. So down here we have radioactive. Do I have my data points correct? Let's double check. And so the way that we can tell that is we look at the numbers. So the numbers over here go to about 4,000, and the numbers over here go up to about 40. And so actually the x-axis data, the ones that go around to 4,000, are the distance. So this is distance from, and I'm going to put the unit of kilometers, and our y-axis data is then radioactive age. And I'll put MYA, again that stands for millions of years ago, so those volcanoes were formed this number, so 45 million years ago. Okay, in order to get this into your document, you just need to highlight the graph. So click anywhere kind of on the edges of the graph, right click, you can copy, and when you go back over here, you can actually delete this. You don't need to show that because your graph has all the information you need, and you can go ahead and insert your graph into question 5. For question 6, you're going to do an analysis. So you're going to look at the distance versus the age and describe the relationship. So we just talked about that linear trend that we saw. And so as the islands go further away from Kilauea, they are older. We know that because we know about the movement of the Pacific Plate and we know about that hotspot formation. This is just really showing us how scientists use data to come up with these ideas. So until this data was collected, we didn't actually know that for sure. It was a hypothesis that scientists had, but here we're supporting that with data. Okay, graph number 7 says to look at the distance of each island versus the elevation. So we're going to be looking back at that information that we got from that first diagram. So I'm clicking in the Excel file and I'm highlighting both columns, distance and approximate elevation. So I'm going to highlight all of the data here that we want to include in our graph. I'm going to go again up to Insert, over to different types of charts, and I'm going to click here in this drop down. And again, I want a scatter chart. Because this is sort of an exponential decay type graph, it's not as easy to insert a trend line. So if you want to insert a trend line, you can do it here, or you can leave it like this and you can come back and kind of sketch your own trend line over it. So let's add in a meaningful title. Okay, so we're looking at the distance of each of the different volcanoes from Kilauea versus the elevation of those volcanoes. So again, I'm just going to move this graph over so that you can see all of the options available. So I'm clicking in this white area, I'm going to move it over here, and you can see with this plus sign that you can add in axes titles. We can try and add a trend line, but it always sort of defaults to make a linear one, so that's not really helpful for what we have, the data type that we have. So you can, again, go back and you'll be able to draw that in by hand. When I click here on axes titles, I can enter in the information, and on the x-axis, again, we have distance. And that was in kilometers, so km for our unit there. And on the y-axis, we have we can say volcano elevation, or you can say island elevation, and we are doing that in meters. Okay. Again, once you have that graph created, click somewhere on the white area of the edges of the chart, right-click, and then copy. Once you have your graph copied, you can go back over here into the document. You can delete the chart that's there unless you wanted to do it by hand, and then you can Control V, or you could right-click and you could insert a picture to insert your graph that way. So either way, once you get your graph inserted, you'll take a look at question 8, which again asks you to analyze your graph. If you want to insert that trend line, so the trend line for your graph this time uses exponential decay. So in your Word document, you can go up to the toolbar, and if you don't have this draw option, let me know. I can kind of walk you through how to get that. But if you have the draw option, you just pick one of your pens, and then you can draw your trend line. So my mouse is being a little finicky today, but that's a decent approximation of what that line would look like. So we've got this exponential decay. Again, number 8, you're going to compare this trend. So as we move further away from Kilauea, the elevation decreases, and it decreases a lot. So the elevation decreases quite quickly. We are going to use that information to go back to our original hypothesis and say, does this support what we thought about how the Hawaiian Islands formed and about how hotspot island chains form. Again, if you want help with this lab, if you have any questions about how to do the graphing, or if you have questions specifically about the way Word or Excel are working for you, please let me know. I'm available during office hours, or I can help you by email or by setting up a Class Connect session. Keep up the great work, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.